Joe Biden, our very own Joseph Robinette Biden, is at 33%. That's his approval rating. This approval rating is lower than Donald Trump's approval rating was after January 6th. I'm saying it. I am what political analysts call a savant, okay? A bit brilliant. And, you know, not to say, I mean, hate to say it, but I did say that Trump was going to win the Iowa caucus, which was very hard to see, apparently. Bit of a Nostradamus type situation there. It is what it is. I'll take my roses. Fuck it.
It's 1 a.m. here in New York, midnight in Iowa, and the very first test of the 2024 Republican primary season is now complete. Joining me now at the top of this hour is former Obama campaign manager, MSNBC political analyst, and my former boss, David Plouffe, former RNC chairman and co-host of The Weekend, Michael Steele, former communications director for Jeb Bush's 2016 campaign, and now writer-at-large for The Bulwark, Tim Miller, and former communications director for President Barack Obama, Jennifer.
God, it's so sick. I love MSNBC Nightmare Blunt Rotation.
Palmieri. Now, tonight in Iowa, NBC News projected that Donald Trump won the caucuses with more than 50% of the vote. These numbers really cement the 4 times indicted defendant candidate's status as the front runner. We already knew this, but in the Republican field. The race for second place had a little bit more drama, with Nikki Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis locked in a dead heat for most of the night. But as awkward as he may be at times, and he is awkward, DeSantis did put in the work in Iowa, and maybe that helped him. He visited.
Yeah, it helped him so hard. It helped him so freaking hard, dude. Yeah, imagine going to, like, what was it, 239 campaign stops. 239 campaign stops. $120+ million spent, and he barely got 2 extra points on the board than Nikki Haley, dude. God damn, what a fucking loser. Oh my God. And honestly, the Republican Party of our time is also uncharacteristically loser-like as well. Wait, hold on. I was making sure that, like, you know, my Twitch account manager is aware that, like, there's an active, deliberate attempt to try and get me fucking banned on the platform. Why don't more Indians have Americanized names? Plenty do. What do you mean? This is actually a really interesting thing that I don't know if I've ever talked about before. I tweeted about it earlier today. DeSantis did really well in Iowa. Just look how his polling changed over time. Yeah. I mean, he flatlined, which is pretty funny. Overall, I mean, it dipped from its highest point, right? And then it flatlined completely, and it just stayed there and dipped even further by the end of it. The problem is the issue is it's just so, like, this should have shown everyone in the Republican Party that this guy is awful. He staked everything on Iowa, thinking that he could manipulate the caucus structure to, like, eke out a victory for himself against Trump. It literally worked in the exact opposite direction. Oh my God, your tweets about your grandfather is insane. Oh yeah, I was gonna show this. So Nikki Haley had this to say, by the way, after Iowa, which I find very funny.
Are you a racist party? Are you involved in a racist party?
No. We're not a racist country, Brian. We've never been a racist country. Our goal is to make sure that today is better than yesterday. Are we perfect? No. But our goal is to always make sure we try and be more perfect every day that we...
Just because the myth that who wins Iowa wins the Republican Party? No, that's the myth in the Democratic Party, and that doesn't work in the Democratic Party anymore either. There is no myth that anyone who wins Iowa wins the Republican primary. That's not correct. What do I mean by this? Look at, like, the last 3 Republican primary winners, and you will get an understanding of why that is not the case. Now, going back to Nimrata and what she had to say here, America was never a racist country. Someone should ask why she uses Nikki instead of Nimrata. Okay?
We can. I know I faced racism when I was growing up, but I can tell you today is a lot better than it was then. Our goal is to lift up everybody, not go and divide people on race or gender or party or anything else. We've had enough of that in America. That's why I'm so passionate.
It's so funny because, like, it's so funny that she's saying this while her name is literally Nikki Haley, okay, and not Nimrata. But beyond that, I mean, this is something that I'm pretty sure a lot of foreigners have also experienced. The funny thing is that most Republicans will see this and think, yeah, she's faced anti-white racism in the past. Yeah, exactly. Emwood keeps saying this is a porno name, and he's kind of right. He is cooking on that. Nikki Haley is like kind of a porno name. Like Nikki Benz. Okay, anyway, whatever. Nikki is a Punjabi name meaning little. Yes. Yes, I know. Okay? I know. But there's a difference why she's not using Nimrata and using Nikki. How do I know this? Okay, why do I know this? Because my grandfather literally told me when I came to the United States of America to either change my name, okay, or use Dawn, because it sounded Irish. Bitch, I know. Dawn is my middle name. Dogan is how you spell it, okay? And my grandfather literally was like, just either change your name, don't use Hasan, okay? Because people are going to say you're a terrorist. You're not going to get jobs. You're not going to be looked at in the same way when people realize that your name is like Arabic sounding and Muslim sounding. Change your fucking name, or at the very least, use Dogan, okay? Now, I, at the time, thought that that was a ridiculous thing that he was saying. Like, I understood that he wasn't wrong, right? And this is a immigrant parent. This is actually a straight up immigrant parent technique. Every immigrant parent does, okay? Like, all of the East Asian, South Asian immigrants, they do that 100%. I didn't. I grew up in fucking Turkey. I didn't feel like doing that. I thought it was ridiculous, okay? And yeah, Dogan Piker is what he was like, you're lucky because your last name doesn't sound Muslim. You might as well just, change, use your middle name if you're not going to change your name. Why do you think people do that? Why do people do that? Well, they do that because America is definitely fucking racist. It's not something that, like, it's not something that you're going to ever be able to describe to a Kyle, okay? You're not going to be able to describe this to a fucking Hank who is, of German and English descent. But that is the case. 1000%. People perceive you very differently. People perceive me very differently when they find out my name is Hasan, okay? Now, it doesn't matter. It's what you do with it, right? And I'm also very, very white passing. And therefore, in most circumstances, I've been able to overcome any of the additional challenges. And most people don't perceive me in that way regardless, right? But there are circumstances where that kind of rears its head. Nobody is ever going around, making jokes about how I have supported the IRA and therefore making up funny pet names for myself with respect to the IRA or the ANC, but they certainly are doing it for Hasanabi, Hasanabi, comparing me to Osama bin Laden. These are things that, of course, come with the territory. Anytime I cover the Middle East, it's not surprising to me that a lot of white American political commentators will immediately turn around and go, yeah, dog, you're a fucking terrorism defender. You love terrorism. Those guys are terrorists and barbarians, and so are you. Okay? Like the C-word debacle. You're automatically a brown Muslim when the issue comes up. Yup. When it comes to anti-white racism, all of a sudden, I am not white. Okay? Happens all the time. That's why people do it. If if my name was Dogan or if it was actually Hank and I never told anybody that I'm from fucking Turkey, I'd be fine. Willing to bet I'd be perceived very differently. In some negative ways and in some positive ways. So just something to think about. But all of that stems from the fact that you know, there is a prevailing, dominant, white ethnocentric, white supremacist American attitude. Okay? That's it. That's why it's additionally funny that Nimrata Haley is the one who apparently told her husband to change their name or something too. There was I remember something like that. I remember reading something about that. If anyone has that article anywhere. Screw the races, never change. It absolutely sucks that America's supposed to be the land of immigrants. Yeah, here we are. Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
All 99 counties, and it paid off a bit with a second place finish in the state, even if he doesn't have a real path forward, it seems. Third place finisher Nikki Haley is now off to New Hampshire, where traditionally presidential candidates go right after the Iowa caucus.
This also is like just weird and sociopathic in my opinion. From Bill to Michael, why Mr. Haley switched names? You just don't look like a Bill, Miss Haley said, she told him. Instead, Miss Haley decided his middle name was a better fit. From that point on, I started calling him Michael. All my friends did the same. That's insane. Why did they write about that?
Caucuses, but not Donald Trump. He will once again buck tradition and head to a courtroom in New York City for the start of the E. Jean Carroll defamation trial. And that civil case is, of course, on top of the 4 criminal trials that Trump is also facing, where he also seems to want to appear in the courtrooms, involving his hoarding of classified information and attempts to overturn the last election, just to name a few. But Trump's legal woes certainly didn't hold him back tonight. As we were just talking about 2/3 of Iowa caucus goers say that even if he's convicted, they still consider him to fit to be president. So this slice of the Republican electorate seems pretty clear who their first choice is, criminal charges and all. Back with me is my all-star panel here. So we've talked a lot about Trump. We've talked a lot about the Republican candidates. Let's talk a little bit about the other guy running, President Joe Biden. So, Pluff, you talked to the campaign a lot. If they're watching what happened tonight, what do they think of it? Do they think about it?
Well, one thing that's important when you're incumbent is when does the general election start? And so this would suggest it's going to start a lot sooner than you'd probably like.
Is that good for them?
I would argue maybe it is, just because the sooner this turns into a searing contrast, probably the better off Biden is. So even if you'd probably like a couple more months to prepare, I think being in that boxing ring with him and him alone is probably helpful.
Chad, if you think that I would currently stop everything I'm doing and watch the Ron DeSantis town hall, you have to be on crack, okay? You have to literally be on the most unadulterated version of crack cocaine, like just genuinely the crack that makes you dab people up. Why the fuck would I do that? No, you're gross, chatters. Chatters, I love you all, but not you motherfuckers that are on that let's watch the charisma suck of Robert McDonald DeSantis bullshit on CNN. Dude, I don't want to. That is, oh my God, it's a race to the bottom. I'm just like, I'm being spiritually attacked. Okay, I'm getting psychic damage just thinking about like the back and forth suck job that is currently occurring between Jake Tapper and Ron DeSantis. It is literally a race to the bottom. This is the absolute worst. This is a black hole has opened up, a gaping black hole of sugar mans. You know what's really funny about this? Chatters are literally saying that the guy who basically personally absolutely destroyed his own chances by being the least likable freak that was not good enough for the Republican Nazi small business owning tyrants. That's the guy you want to voluntarily watch. That's insane.
And I think what it shows is, you know, the Republican Party is, my guess is the biggest concern I have as I think about next November is the turnout differential that could be there. You know, there's not the enthusiasm for Biden that you'd like. Maybe they can remedy that. I think Trump's going to get his turnout. There's clearly some disaffected Republicans that may sit it out, or maybe Biden could do as well as he did in 20, and that was important. But I think Trump's going to get his turnout. I would argue if he gets convicted, even more so. So I think these numbers show whatever you think it's going to take to win a state like Wisconsin or Arizona, if I'm the Biden campaign, I add 10% to it. It's basically a tax that the Trump turnout's going to be there. But that's the big thing is, starting next Tuesday, if Haley doesn't win New Hampshire, Trump's speech is going to be, I'm done with the primary, I've dispatched with all these second-rate losers, and it's time for the rematch.
Yep.
And it's going to be right on your doorstep, whether you like it or not.
The Biden campaign is fundraising off of Trump's front-runner status tonight. They don't really utter the names Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis because none of them think that they're going to be running against them. They do have this interesting challenge, which you've talked about on the Republican side, too, where there's this belief from a fair number of undecided voters that it's not going to be Trump-Biden, right? That it won't be Trump on the other side, which, to Pluff's point, if this is clear that it's Trump to everyone, they are helped by that. But what do you think they should be doing to make that more clear?
The Biden people?
Yeah.
I agree with everything David said. I think if I'm advising the president's campaign right now, I'd look at them and say, can you put our boy on the street? Can you just have him walk some neighborhoods? Have him go sit on,
I do like that they're not really talking about like what Biden could do. I do like what Biden there's, oh my God, my brain is so broken. I'm still having a hard time cooking up. I'm forgetting the top of the hour ad breaks that are coming at the top of the hour. I'm forgetting to run them, the 3-minute ad breaks. I'm forgetting to tell you that if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. Messed up, chat. Anyway, the thing is, at the top of the hour, there is a 3-minute ad break. But also, the other thing is, they're not even talking about what Biden could do to win the election, because what can he do to win the election?
As in President Biden.
President Biden, yeah.
Our boy.
Our boy, yeah.
Just to be clear.
No, I'm saying student loan debt. Yeah, there's shit that he could do. I'm saying that, like, they're not going to push this. They're not going to mention that. They're doing the same 2016 era issue again, which is that that, you know, they're just covering Trump. Is Trump this, Trump that, Trump this, Trump that. And the reality is, it's probably hard for Biden to defend his recent positions. Sorry, I'm looking at on the other fucking screen. I'm looking at so many people just mauling on Twitter, just begging for Twitch to ban me. They're like, Hasan had a literal Nazi terrorist slaver murderer on his stream, and it's so psychotic. It's like people are so not normal about this shit. Stop reading the haters, man. I mean, the haters are, you know, I got to know what the fuck they're saying so I can get ready for it.
Which is fine. I know people may be like, who's the boy?
But that's my point. You got to bring it to that level so that people understand he's my boy. They got to connect with this guy, and he is connectable. And Democrats overthink the proposition here. This is not a complicated scenario against Donald Trump. It is a very complicated scenario against Nikki Haley. And so you need to understand the runway you're being given. So let Donald Trump try to shorten that runway by coming out of New Hampshire saying, okay, let's do it. I'm ready. I'm ready too. Where you want to meet so I can talk about your 91 indictments. So I can talk about your E.G. Carroll problem, and I can talk about the money you have to pay out. Oh, are your donors still paying your legal bills? I mean, this is the level that the campaign has to be prepared to go. And if you don't really want to see your boy get into that space, meaning the president, okay, then the political operation around him has to go there. And they haven't yet, and that to me is stunning. I
mean, I do think that your boy, President Joe Biden, you know, going into communities is actually, to your point, what his superpower is, right? I mean, he loves, he's kind of more extroverted than almost anyone I've met. I mean, it's downright exhausting, actually. But he loves that glad handing and all of that stuff. It's often blamed on the communication strategy, which we all know is like never the totality of the issue.
spot for you.
I know, it's like, I'm feeling I'm getting shakes, I'm sure. I used to have mug, would say we'd make mugs that say not a comms problem, because sometimes it's
just
oftentimes
a problem,
not a comms problem. But talk to me, both of you, whoever wants to start, a little bit about, we know what Joe Biden's superpowers are, right? He's empathetic, he connects.
Oh, what? Oh, yeah. I would like to hear. Oh, yeah. Let's go. Let's hear what his fucking superpowers are from the person who, from the person who worked for him.
Connects with people. He loves, glad handing. He did give 2 good speeches, but that's not his superpower. It's not even really how people are voting. So what should they be doing?
I think that, first of all, I would say I do think that I know the Biden campaign is like, this is going to be the earliest general election we've ever had.
Yeah.
They're prepared for that. It started on January 5th with that speech that he gave in Valley Forge. And I think, they are making a ton of hires. They have their hires for the battleground. People were the battlegrounds in January, right? Like normally you're hoping to get people there May, June, July. Like they are actually on it. And he did, last week he did Valley Forge. He went to South Carolina. The vice president has been in all the early primary states. He went back to Pennsylvania later in the week. He's going to go to Michigan. He's going to Nevada. He is, and in making these speeches, they're doing the big contrast with Trump, on democracy and freedoms and all that things that are at stake. They're also, if you look at what he says, but then also what they're doing online, and I know you saw this when you went to Wilmington, Jen, that very targeted communication around accomplishments for African-American voters, accomplishments for...
I think we live in like genuinely different planets, actually. We live on entirely separate planes of existence. We might as well be fucking plane maxing into Draco Malfoy's dick or whatever. Okay, we might as well be sleepwalking into Hogwarts to fuck Dumbledore or whatever people are doing on TikTok. Okay, everybody's operating on an entirely different alternate reality. Shifting, that's what I was thinking. Plane maxing is not the right word. Shifting is the right word. What is bro saying? It's called shifting, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone is doing it, okay? It's all the rage. People on Fox News talking about Donald Trump having a hard cock and being sexy. People on MSNBC talking about how much Biden is beloved when he is historically at a low approval rating. I'm going to fucking lose my mind. How can you say such things? Okay? Joe Biden, currently, as it stands, our very own Joseph Robinette Biden is at 33%. That's his approval rating. This approval rating is lower than Donald Trump's approval rating was after January 6th. Donald Trump's approval rating after January 6th was 34%. Please understand, Joe Biden currently is less popular in America than a president who did an insurrection. Joe Biden is as unpopular in the United States of America as a president who put us in the global war on terror and also was seen as the responsible party for the fucking financial crisis. It is crazy. Like that's the level of that's the biggest poll dip. Now, the question should be, why is that the case? Well, there's a couple reasons. Some that you could change and others you can't. Isn't that a sign that approval ratings are bullshit? What? No, that doesn't mean approval ratings are bullshit at all. The reason why his approval ratings are so low is because people think he's insanely old. That's number one. Number two, people don't see his policy accomplishments. Okay? They don't. Why? Because a lot of them came on the trailing end of a shit ton of concessions. Americans want expediency in Congress. They do not want back and forth communications. They do not want glad handling. They do not want compromise. They want immediate expediency. Okay? That's what they want. Now, of course, under the Brandon regime, the Americans experienced genuine negative real wage growth for at least a year and a half. That is going to stay on their minds. You can turn around and say the inflation crisis has genuinely gotten to the soft landing that the Brandon camp promised it would, and that much is true. But it doesn't matter because what I just mentioned to you still matters. It's still on people's minds. Okay? Brandon has also been the overseer of a loss of civil liberties for women. Now, of course, that is directly on the hands of the Republican Party. Everybody pretty much understands that. But that does definitely probably frustrate a lot of people that think that maybe Brandon hasn't done enough to combat against that. So that's something to consider as well. And then you have the good stuff, like you have the IRA, okay, Inflation Reduction Act, the price of insulin getting stabilized at $35. You have many different plants opening up in the United States of America, battery manufacturing. These are all good things. Joe Brandon himself has personally, okay, under his communist dictatorship, the dictatorship of the proletariat of Brandon Heads, has spent more money on public transit than any former president in contemporary American history. Okay? We're talking major improvements to public transit, specifically rail. This part is also true. Brandon has also done marginal student loan debt relief, not the student loan debt relief he promised. However, Brandon is the first American president in modern history that actually went as a sitting president and sat at a picket line and spoke at a picket line. This is huge, okay? Brandon also pulled out of Afghanistan. That's also huge. I'll give him his roses, okay? I'll give him his roses, especially when you compare him to his contemporaries. The problem is the Democratic Party has a messaging problem, okay? The Democratic Party does not communicate any of those factors. The Democratic Party will cut a fucking deal with the train corporations in secrecy with the likes of Pete Buttigieg after the railway strikes are basically very publicly cast aside and broken by the administration. And the actual things that the railway unions actually fought for, the Brandon camp will deliver. They do it quietly. They do it quietly, and then there's no coverage on it, right? I talk about it from time to time, but it's hard for me to talk about that when you got a very obvious problem. And that problem is genocide. That problem is ethnic cleansing. Biden is a genocidaire. Biden is a defender of genocide. In a real criminal justice tribunal, Joseph Robinette Biden would be tried and found guilty of his crimes of aiding and abetting ethnic cleansing. Okay? Mike from PA is having a meltdown right now. Hearing you compliment Brandon on some good, he wouldn't disagree with me. Everything I said is correct. Problem is, it's not enough. And the problem is, his bads are much, much more obvious, possibly even heightened by the fact that he is 800,000 years old and not all there. And his goods don't get talked about, okay? That's the issue. The good stuff he's done does not get coverage. And that is a problem with the Democratic Party. They are not messaging. They are not. What is this? What do you say? Thank you. This was a great interview.
They've all tried caught, including the captain of the ship that he went on. He's saying that the vibes are immaculate.
I'm gonna repost. So, yeah. What was I talking about? Oh, we were talking about Brandon. So here's the problem. The Democratic Party as a whole does not message against the Republican Party. The Republicans run like there's an election every day. The Democrats remember that there's an election every 4 years and start messaging 3 years behind. The Democratic Party does not message year-round in the same way that the Republican Party does. That is an issue. Right now, as it stands, immigration is one of the top issues in this country. And the only thing that the Biden administration has done, the only thing that the Democratic Party has done as it pertains to immigration so far is basically doing the lighter version of the Republican Party's white nativist, horrifyingly reactionary, horribly violent immigration strategy. 94% white Iowa Republicans turned around and said immigration is their top priority. Joseph Robinette Biden has openly continued Donald Trump's Israel-Palestine policies, and he's openly continued Donald Trump's white nativist immigration policies despite running against both of those ideological positions. This is a major issue. This is a huge problem. And the Democrats don't communicate against it at all. What do? They just sit back and let the Biden administration do basically the same exact policies as the Trump administration. Now, I've talked about this quite a bit. It doesn't matter what your ideological position is when you listen to me speak on the Democratic Party. When I put my electoralist hat on, I am no different, I guess, from a Democratic Party consultant, okay? And I put that hat on right now. What do I see? I see a weak Democratic Party led by an old man who is no longer telegenic. His best years are behind him, and he's barely there. I see that man where the 75% of the base of said party, 75% of Democratic Party voters are saying they need a new candidate. I see that man personally, in the most zealous way possible, push for an ethnic cleansing campaign that is both immoral, morally repugnant for sure, but also genuinely harming America's prospects, America's soft power politics, because we can't even rein in our attack dog in the Middle East. We can't even pull them back. There's an inconsistency in the messaging from Biden's camp. No red lines for Israel. Okay, Israel needs to dial it back in, but also we're going to give all the weapons and all the munitions to Israel simultaneously. These are things that people do see. This makes Biden look weak again. It makes us look like, if we are the Democratic Party, asleep at the fucking wheel, both to the rest of the world, but to everybody else as well. Now, this is something I regularly talk about, and many of you have heard me say this time and time again. When the Democratic Party is facing an opposition that calls them bloodthirsty, communist, pedophile vampires, they can do one of two things. They can turn around and say, no, these are the reactionary, bloodthirsty, fascist Nazis. Or they can turn around and say, you know what? We're not what you say we are, but we believe that when you go low, we go high, and that there is a real Republican Party out there. There's a smart Republican Party out there. There's a strong Republican Party out there that doesn't call us pedophilic vampires, as a matter of fact. And guess what? We also agree with you that communism is really bad. Communism is so bad. When the Democratic Party does that, which they did on a messaging bill that they voted on, shouts out to Ro Khanna for voting on that messaging bill as well, one of the weirdest guys in Congress, okay? When they vote on that, they don't change hearts and minds. None of the people think that they're all of a sudden not pedophilic vampire communists. You're talking about a group of individuals who say Nancy fucking Pelosi is a communist. They think Jeff Bezos is a communist. Are you insane? And when you turn around and instead of messaging against that, if you capitulate to the position that communism is bad and socialism is bad, you didn't show the rest of the United States of America that you are objectively not a communist. You didn't show the Republicans that you actually are online, you are aligned with them. All you did was push maybe some of the socialists away. Many of them don't vote anyway, and they're marginal regardless. And beyond that, what you ended up doing is basically normalize the position, the reactionary position, that socialism is bad. So now the Republicans can point to anything and everything, including you, Nancy Pelosi, and many others in the Democratic Party, or all of the Democratic Party's policies, as socialism. Anyone and everyone is a socialist as long as they're not a Republican Party member. So you just gave yourself a handicap. You just kneecapped yourself for no reason when you did that. And the same goes for all of the Democratic Party's policy. Okay? The same goes for the entirety of the Democratic Party's policy. We do this every single day. We do this for every single issue. When the Republican Party says immigrants are poisoning the blood of this nation, and therefore we have to set up concentration camps at the border, the Democratic Party runs on, we can't do that. That's unacceptable. But when the Democratic Party actually gets into power, what do? They follow the Trump Republican reactionary, white nativist, racist immigration policies. Now, what does that do? Well, I'll tell you what that does. That is what is known as the ratchet effect. Republicans push the country further and further right, and then Democrats come into power and they calcify this position. They keep the country. They normalize how right-wing the slant now is. They make it so that we stay there. That is precisely the role of the Democratic Party. They don't pull it back. They don't pull it back into a normal area. They don't pull it back to and reverse course on policy decisions that the prior Republican Party administration made. Very damaging, very devastating. And when they do that on issues like immigration, all you're doing is ceding ground to the right-wing attitudes that immigration is devastating, that immigration is bad for this country. When you don't message against that Republican mentality by saying that's not right, immigrants, undocumented immigrants in this country do less crime per capita than documented immigrants and natural-born U.S. citizens. When you don't hammer in that point, or the fact that undocumented immigrants, as a matter of fact, are not a burden on the United States economy, but pay taxes, okay? When you don't hammer on these positions, when you don't talk about immigrants as though they are human beings and allow the Republicans to run the narrative when they're in power and then run the narrative when you're in power still, well, all you've done is cede ground on the idea that immigrants are somehow bad for this nation. That's all you did. And guess what? You will never win reactionary Republican voters with right-wing policy because you will never be able to out-racist the Republican Party. And many people are not looking for reasonable immigration policies at the border. They're looking for racism. And you will never be able to outflank the Republican Party on racism. You can't do that. They have more experience being racist than you. They have more natural talent in the field of racism. They're competitive racists. They will always be able to destroy you in the marketplace of racism. That's it. And when you concede and when you cede territory and when you normalize white natives immigration policies, then Trump is going to kick it up a high notch. He's going to kick it up a notch again. And that's how you arrive at immigrants poison the blood pool of America. Okay? That's it. That's why Biden fucking sucks dick. Okay? There you go.
Hispanic voters, the voters they had in 20 that they have to win back. So it's not like, oh, they're asleep at the switch. They're on it in terms of actually now implementing plans. I think that, and because we've been causing trouble in the back all night talking. Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? More of this. And we're all in agreement that we need to see more of Joe Biden. Yeah. And even though he's older and and he can misspeak, let us see that. Let us be accustomed to it, and let us see what we love about the guy too. And if you want to put a pit dog on television, Mitch Landrieu is going over to the campaign, and that guy,
I know,
he is an amazing communicator.
He's a pit bull dog, yes, but he's also a politico. He also loves to glad hand and also talks like a normal human being. To Palmieri's point, I did spend some time with the campaign, and one of the things, obviously, you have to meet people where they are, an overused term, but they're very focused on that. A lot of what they're happening is a little behind the scenes. It's like hard to break through the blocking out of the sun of Donald Trump and the crazy stuff he says and all of his legal issues. So a lot of what they're doing online is private, it's targeted, but I mean, Tim, you and I have talked often about how you wish. It's so funny.
I just want more.
Tim wants more, but Tim also always asks me, why can't the Democratic Party just sing off the same song sheet?
Just once.
Okay.
Oh my gosh,
it's
just
not
once.
a monolithic party like the Republican Party.
Give me
We'll
more
put the
of it,
lyrics
though.
in bigger letters for you if you need, but please.
Give me more Biden and give me more Biden's people out there. I do need more. I need more Biden surrogates. I need more Biden. We don't need to treat him like fine china.
Right.
I do want to see him out there. I wanted to go back to one other thing, though, to what David said. I think there might have been maybe some good news for Biden, though, in the numbers tonight. I agree that in general Trump will get his people out. But this caucus turnout wasn't anything.
No, it was
impressive.
actually small. Even after all of the Iowans were saying, we're fine, we're going to put on socks and go out in the cold.
So maybe that's the weather, maybe that's the fact that it's a blowout. But I think it's just something to keep an eye on.
Bro, these guys are on the highest level, like maximalist crack cocaine position. There is virtually nothing good that came out of the Iowa caucuses. You are smoking big doinks in Amish, my friend. Donald Trump is dominating. It's not anything you didn't know. And also, the Republicans are insanely behind Donald Trump, or at the very least, the things that he believes in. Bro, Donald Trump, they say even if he goes to jail, even if he's convicted, they're going to vote for him. The Trump train is on board. It's on the tracks. It's going choo-choo. Meanwhile, Biden is hemorrhaging support. And these guys are living in fantasy world where they went to Hogwarts, the fuck Dumbledore and Draco Malfoy, where they think in that fantasy world that they shifted into in this parallel universe, Brandon is a dynamo. He's a retail politician like it's 1994 again. He's out there saying slurs. He's out there talking about the racial jungle and shit. He's out there advocating for desegregation because advocating for segregation. That is the Biden that was the retail politician. The Biden now, what's he going to do? You don't care about Palestine, Hasan? This is true. I famously don't care about Palestine.
167,000 last time. It looks like we're at 120 something right now. So a big downtick from 2016. The other thing is, what's this number? Now, 32%, if Trump is convicted, is unfit to be president. That's a big number, even if that's off, even if it's 22%, and even if he's not convicted. Yeah. That's a group of people for the Biden campaign to work from. Like, they can speak to those people, and they can persuade those people, and that is a persuadable audience.
No, definitely. Totally.
The folks that went out there to vote for Nikki Haley today, it seems like most of them are pretty sick of Donald Trump in a way that, you know, getting almost to Tim Miller.
Bro, you are, again, listen, I think these guys have huffed on their own copium, and they personally think Nikki Haley is actually Puss in Boots, cunt mother, slay queen. Like, we're joking when we say that shit. These guys are not joking. I think they legitimately think that.
Michael Steele. I don't know if they're ready to call Joe Biden their boy yet, but they seem pretty sick of Donald Trump. And so I think that was also encouraging and is like another, you know, big fat ball coming down the middle of the plate for the Biden campaign if they can hit it.
Can I just add one more number to back up what Tim's saying? One other important number that's buried in here for the Biden campaign, which is good. Of the Republican caucus goers, 11% of them said if it's a Biden Trump November, they'll vote for Biden. So to really emphasize the point that Tim made, there's a lot.
I like people saying turnout is less than half for 2020 and Trump, though. 2020 turnout is always going to be a little bit different because of COVID. And not only that, but also we don't know what the turnout is going to look like. We don't know what the turnout is going to look like. It was a blizzard too, but we don't know what the turnout is going to look like because we have no way of knowing what the turnout looks like for Brandon. Yes, it was a 2016 caucus. There was I'm talking about the 2016 or 2020 Iowa caucus for I mixed up. The chatter said 2020 Iowa caucus, but the chatter meant 2016 Iowa caucus. There was no Iowa caucus in 2020. Donald Trump was incumbent. We don't know what the Democratic momentum looks like. We don't know. We don't know yet. But there are different conditions, like a blizzard in a caucus structure.
Not in this mix in a state like Iowa that's good for Democrats to take out of Iowa as they begin to put in place that advance on the
and
a third
election. We're against an abortion ban, which.
No, there's a lot of material there. And of course, in the actual battleground states, which sadly Iowa is not anymore,
right.
You know, we live in a sophisticated data world. So the Biden campaign will have a pretty good sense of who those actual voters are. And just, you know, presidential campaign can seem overwhelming, but it's actually quite simple. In this election, it's like 7 states. That's all it is. It's not 50. And it's
not Iowa.
4 to 5% of actual swing voters. That's it. Small number of Americans. And it's a fairly small number of people that you're trying to get to turn out. You're not sure who's going to turn out. So I think in these numbers, with the swing voters, I think there's a lot to be encouraged by. But I think for Biden to win, you've got to make sure that you do both sides of it. that you reach your turnout goals, and you may be right. My suspicion has all been wrong. Though, if the call to Republicans to restore the wrongfully, terminated leader is going to be pretty strong. And I always think in campaigns it's always better, even if your data says they're going to get 10 votes in a precinct, assume they're going to get 12. Like, you got to raise your numbers. But I do think with swing voters, and the 11% number, I hadn't seen that. You said these are hardcore, mostly evangelical Iowa caucus attenders saying that, not general elected Republicans. That would suggest that maybe there's up to 15, 18%. He won't get them all. But boy, if Biden could end up getting 6 to 8%, that's how he gets to 270 again.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
This is all very interesting and gives us a little hope. We need a little hope moment out of tonight.
I had to let this big old bitch out.